The Atheist Debates Patreon project presents Thoughts and Prayers. So, there's been another shooting, and I figured it'd be worth spending a couple minutes giving my thoughts on this one. Some of them we address, some of them we don't. There were like 4 in Minnesota within like a 24-hour period, along with other stuff. It's incredibly frustrating. And every time one of these things happens, people are offering up their thoughts and prayers. And of course, that leads to mocking thoughts and prayers. I'm sure that I will be saying things today that will offend people, and I don't care. The actions taken by this vile murderer are inexcusable. It doesn't matter what mental health issues they may have suffered from. It doesn't matter how rough their lives were, how unfairly they might have been treated. This person gave us a peek into their broken brain by leaving a manifesto and some videos. And while it provides us insight into the type of mind that can slaughter people, and in fact, children, in a church or school or anywhere, none of it excuses what they did. If you think there's a but coming, you're wrong. There's an and coming. This individual killed people, and it was wholly unwarranted. There is no condition or justification for this. There's not even a remotely sane rationalization. They deserve no forgiveness. They didn't ask for any forgiveness. They didn't expect any. And they're now dead. And they knew they were going to die. This was a sensationalized either attempt at death by cop or let me act out my sick fantasies and go out in a blaze of crap. Didn't matter who they hurt. There's no worry on their part about whether this causes any harm to anybody else. Harm was their goal. So why would anybody care that it makes the conversations even more difficult? What they did was wrong and inexcusable, and we need to take steps to reduce the likelihood of similar events in the future. And that's almost certainly not going to happen. I mean, let's not pretend. This happens a lot. This incident in particular will likely be talked about more than others, even those with higher death tolls, because this shooter was apparently trans. There's no indication that their trans status was relevant to their decisions, to their actions, or even the rationalizations that they try to come up with. They hated life. They were fascinated by incidents like these, and they sought to emulate them. And they should have realized, but did not care enough to stop, that their actions were more likely to be used to further vilify and marginalize trans folks than it would ever do to make the world any better. They weren't concerned about making the world better. They didn't care about the consequences. The consequences they cared about was their desire to do harm. In 99.8% of other shootings, no one calls for a rounding up of the cishet dudes that do these mass slaughters, but that narrative started almost immediately after the events were reported, when details about the shooter came to the forefront. When the Pulse nightclub shootings happened, people were reluctant to call it a hate crime, although mostly they came around. And it definitely was. But this has been called a hate crime against the Catholic community. And perhaps it is, though the person acting on behalf of the hatred in this scenario hated all kinds of things, right up to and including life. To pretend that the Catholic Church is a target of hatred in the same way that the queer community is patently ridiculous, which doesn't excuse anything about it. This could have happened at a Baptist church, a Catholic church. This could have happened at a community center. But if it was, in fact, targeting the Catholic Church, that still is inexcusable. See, we should absolutely despise the criminal, immoral acts of the Catholic Church, but we should love and care about the rights, dignity, and freedom of Catholics. Some Catholics wind up atheists, some atheists wind up Catholics. That has nothing to do with why I'm saying this. Every human being deserves our communal effort to make the world a better and safer place for them. Despite the people that I despise, I don't wish ill upon them. I don't call for violence at them. I call out violence all the time. I'm not going to say, ooh, yay for my team, screw that other team when it comes to things like violence. I'm sure that there were people in that school who were praying. I'm sure that there were kids and teachers desperately and sincerely pleading for God to let them escape that situation without harm. Those prayers failed for some. There's a passage in Matthew 18, verses 18 through 20, that says, "Truly I say to you, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Again, I say to you, if two of you agree on earth about anything they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am among them." It's kind of echoed in another passage in John 14, verses 13 and 14. "Whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it." And right now, some Christian apologists are going, oh, here we go. Matt doesn't understand the Bible. Okay. See, the first passage in Matthew is not a promise to do whatever you ask. It's about how to deal with conflicts between fellow believers. It is about intra-church struggles. And it's not a promise to actually act to save anyone at risk or do anything other than whatever is in God's plan. And under that understanding of it, if it's not a, hey, God, there's two of us here, we're asking you to save us, you said you would, if that's not what the verse means, then it's irrelevant. And what it is this was God's plan. It was God's plan for those kids to die, because nothing happens that isn't according to God's plan. The passage in John is basically just saying, if you ask me to do what I'm already going to do, what is part of my will, what is part of my plan, I will do that. The asking in my name isn't just the, oh, dear Jesus, do this. It's about asking something that is consistent with the character of Jesus. But the conclusion is the same. The conclusion is the same, that God didn't intervene to stop this. Irrespective of the prayers, irrespective of what the Bible means about it, God didn't intervene to stop this. As a secular humanist, I'm not required or expected to interpret an old book in order to show why my magical friend isn't intervening. I don't have to read through the Humanist Manifesto and say, oh, here's where magical humanism failed to intervene, or what this promise really means. My duty is to educate and help work toward a better world. My obligation is to help people before they become the shooter, and to try to build a world where there will be fewer victims of senseless violence. We live in a world now where a preteen is telling the story of how their classmate acted as a human shield in order to save their life. And we live in a world where this story isn't unique and isn't really that surprising. We live in a world where thoughts and prayers won't stop this. Prayers, by the way, are just thoughts that you pretend are more useful than they are. Intercessory prayer has never been shown to work, and thoughts only work when coupled by actions. We banned assault rifles, and mass shootings declined. We unbanned them, and shootings increased. Wait a minute, Matt. Wait a minute, Matt. Correlation is not causation. You're correct. It's funny how defenders of particular ideologies seem to understand some fallacies when it suits them and then still manage to apply them wrong. Because pointing out the difference in results with or without an assault rifle ban is not saying that this is necessarily causal, that this is necessarily the solution, but there's no identifiable correlation at all between thoughts and prayers and a reduction in those incidents. Oh, they say, Matt, you don't know that God didn't intervene. Maybe without those prayers, there would have been 20 dead kids. If you think like that, please reevaluate all of your life choices. That's a brilliant argument until you realize that you also don't know whether or not the prayers increased the likelihood of this. See, if you can't know what impact something has, you can't claim, well, maybe it made it better, without acknowledging maybe it made it worse, or maybe it didn't do anything at all. You just have unwarranted confidence that it's more likely to have done something good or better. The excuses you give, how can you be supremely confident that something does have an impact without acknowledging that you don't have any good reason for that? The excuses you give, the way you avoid the issue, your refusal to consider the actual data, the lives and rights and safety of others because you think your God has a plan? Thoughts and prayers. When someone wants to try to claim that it works, that thought works, that prayer works, thoughts work when they're coupled with actions. Hands that help instead of hands folded in prayer. I was sick and I prayed and I went to the doctor and God healed me. I was an addict and I prayed and God delivered me. Well, why do you think God delivered you? Was it so you could tell your story to the loved ones of the people whose children were just slaughtered by a sick and twisted individual who God decided not to help? That's not the dunk you think it is. Talking about the wonders that God's done in your life. When there's a tragic accident, the survivors praise God that they survived without realizing that this also means God was willing to let the other ones die. Theists in general and Christians in particular really want their cake and to eat it as well. God helped you. Great. What made you special? I'm not special, Matt. None of us is special. God does what he wants. Cool. Your thoughts are broken, and your prayers are useless. And the rest of us are tired of people dying. Tired of watching children have to explain how their friend died in their arms. Tired of watching people make excuses for this over and over and over and over and over without actually doing anything. Tired of how none of us will be talking about this incident in a week or two, except for those who would like to pretend that the individual who killed these people was a trans demon, and that's their excuse to go after everybody else who fits that category. Instead of acknowledging their apathy, their ideology, and their lack of empathy as the likely causes of a world where this is going to happen, they're okay, and everybody else is broken. This world is broken. It's a fallen, broken world. Thoughts and prayers aren't helpful, but they're probably less harmful than your excuses and your deflection. So do better, please. Don't wait till it's your kid. Don't wait till it's some kid you know. Show that you can care about someone even if they're not in your presence, if they're not in your family tree, if they're not in your neighborhood. Show that your compassion for people goes beyond the people you agree with and the people that agree with you. I'm pretty sure I could do this video again in a week or two to address a completely different incident. Because we've been doing that for years, and it's long past time for it to stop. So be religious if that's what you feel is true and good. Support your God and your church if that's what you feel is true and good, but don't use it as an excuse to not act. I remember a conversation I had a long time ago saying, if God can heal, why do we need doctors? Why should I go to a doctor if God can heal me? And my dad, in a moment of clever response that he probably heard from some preacher when he asked the question, said, yeah, God also gave us a brain to learn how to heal ourselves, and that's what doctors are, and we should make use of that. God helped us by giving us the brains that allow us to become doctors. And while I don't think that's true, that a God was involved at all, I'm thrilled that we have the sort of brain that can allow us to fix some problems and to heal ourselves. Deliver your thoughts and prayers, but also do something that we know is useful. Otherwise, you're just part of the problem. Otherwise, you're just using your God or the Second Amendment or your love of guns or whatever to serve as an excuse for why you don't feel you need to take responsibility for a world that allows this to keep happening. When they come for you, you're going to be happy with just thoughts and prayers? I won't. See you next time.